everyone, and thank you for joining us once again for another episode of Magic of the Heart Cave. My name is Brendon, and of course, we're here with Lacey, the Paper Druid. I'm Mystic Spider-Man. You guys know us by a few names. We're super grateful to be able to be here with you once again, to be able to record this episode. The last one that we did was actually about 11 months to around this time, and that was actually before our son River was born. So needless to say, it's been a very eventful and busy year for us raising our son River. We're incredibly blessed, and we're excited to be able to return to doing these podcasts, to get back into this routine of just kind of wanting to be able to create space for us to practice sharing the things that we're passionate about, the things that make us curious, the things that we hope that you'll enjoy listening to as well. And we hope that it inspires and maybe plants some seeds and just gives you a little bit of a look and insight into our perspective. So this episode is actually on the spiritual perspectives of parenting. So this is one that Lacey and I we've been wanting to do for a while, and at the time of this recording, River's just down for a nap, so we're just going to kind of like go with the flow, literally in the midst of parenting. Here we are. And we got some notes, but as parents, we're just going to kind of do our best to kind of go with the flow. Just before we get into everything, thank you again to everyone for all your support in all formats. Of course, if you guys want to support this, one of the best ways you can do that is by joining on our Patreon. We're going to be doing updates on that over the coming months, but you're going to be seeing a lot of cool stuff there, in addition to the ongoing production of these podcasts and the Awakening Anthology and much, much more. So with that said, I know Lacey's got a few notes for us to be able to start off with, but we'll just kind of start off with the general discussion of, what is the spiritual perspectives that we have on parenting, and, what is this last year really taught us about both ourselves and our journey and everything of that such. So Lacey, I'll pass it over to you, and we can kind of go with the flow from there.
And I think the last year's been quite interesting for us as individuals, but also as parents, and it's been full of joy and wonder and beauty, as well as grief and sadness, which we actually could touch base with a little bit, which I didn't make notes on, but now that I'm thinking about the past year, it's not like you're wearing like rose-colored glasses. There are challenges, but they have shown us just how we can show up as partners, but also as parents. So and I guess that's what we kind of want to start off with, is just a little bit about our, I guess, connection with, that term conscious parenting, what it looks like for us, what we're trying to do by being parents, and kind of like, what we've been doing.
So. I mean, just the whole role of just being a parent, it's impossible to be able to be brought into it without it shifting your paradigm. Prior to this, and some of you, not everyone knows this, but Lacey's got a little bit more experience being a parent than I do. She already has another son with her previous partner, and that son Jaden, he's 8 years old already. So this is Lacey's second time going through the parenting journey, but the first time that we're doing it here together. And there's been a lot of discussions that we've had, and a lot of challenges, and no doubt, like, when you bring a child into this world, that in itself is a very spiritual experience. Like, literally from the moment that you see him for the first time, the entire birthing experience, it was all incredibly psychedelic. The synchronicities leading up to, again, going back to even just like from before he was born, and just kind of the connection that we have had with him before he was even Earthside, which we've alluded to even in the podcast that we did literally a year ago, before we'd even met him. And I know Lacey can speak more on that personally, related to, like, connecting with our children through dream time. And again, I love this idea that from a spiritual perspective, our children choose us. And that was something I remember even, reflecting on that for myself and my own parents, and really kind of like thinking that and feeling that, and be like, okay, I understand it. I understand like what that means to me. Because if my parents weren't who they were, I wouldn't be who I am. And then so, you know, from that perspective, it becomes very interesting because you start to relate to this being, this baby, not just as like this brand new thing, but as like this vessel for a soul that actually has a story that begins beyond the process of birth itself. And so the relationship between ourself and the child actually begins, you know, it's hard to even say when it begins. Perhaps it was always there. From a non-linear perspective of this idea of what we call time, was our connection with River always there? Is, you know, it is in some way like he always a part of our story. And I think it kind of was that in many ways. You know, even for the, and I'll pass over to Lacey because, you know, again, I think even earlier on in our relationship, both of us were feeling like this gravitational pull towards each other, and we felt after we talked about this that it, you know, like the presence of a child, if not more than one child, was kind of like move like gently pushing us towards this. It's like, hey, you guys should be together. You guys should bond. You guys should spend more time, not just because, you know, that in itself is going to create an amazing experience of growth for us and we'll create amazing things out of it. We'll birth many things, but this is how I'm going to come earthside through you.
Yeah.
You become the portal, you become the vessel. And so, you know, the past year has been incredibly amazing, the synchronicities. And I think those moments are the moments that are important to hold on to. It's easy as parents to kind of just be, you know, stuck in the monotonous routine of sleep deprivation and changing diapers and cleaning up after everything and hardly having time to take care of ourselves, especially in those early months, and really having to put a lot of our, you know, old ways off to the side. And you know, there are days where you're just like, oh, like I give up, like I'm this close to the edge. But you know, in those moments, you also have these incredible moments of realness where you get to look at your child and hold them, and you almost take this moment to just be like, oh yeah, like this is what's real, this is what's important, this connection right here, when you see their eyes, and you can almost kind of like think about the future as you're doing it. And I love those moments where, you know, even for myself, and I'll just say this, and I'll pass over to Lacey, just reflecting on this, where, you know, if I'm just holding River and rocking him in the chair as he's going to sleep, and sometimes I hold him and I just kind of like allow myself to drift without falling asleep, but I'm just kind of like reflecting and meditating, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm like having a flash forward of his entire life as I'm holding him. Like I can see him when he's 2, when he's 5, when he's 10, when he's a teenager, and I can almost kind of like begin those conversations, and I'm talking to him in my heart, in my mind, not as if he's a baby, but as if he is a full-blown adult, who is, you know, more than just a son, but is actually a fellow soul on this journey with us. And I think that's an important thing, is from that spiritual perspective, you know, the same way we hold this for other people in our life is to be able to see them as equals, to be able to see them as teachers, as fellow students. Yeah, anyways, there's more to say, but I'll just pass over to Lacey. And Lacey, I know, going back to even just kind of like before River was even born, kind of like all of that
you
journey
covered
is
a lot there.
yeah, but there's more that you got from your
um,
experience as well. Yeah.
like when we think about, like, I guess conscious, like, conception, or like intentional conception, for me with my children, I found that they always found me first. And it's interesting because it depends on like what your spirituality is, or like who you are, but just open up your mind to the thought of that our children can come to us way before they come into the physical. And by doing so, you're already developing a relationship with them in that higher dimensional space through meditation, through, I guess, trance states if you want, or dream time, which I feel like is the most easy, accessible point to reach your future children. So for me, both my babies came to me in dream time many years before they came earthside. And it's fascinating because, you know, when he talks about our like early relationship, and we had this like magnetism, and it was so strong, like stronger than we could fully understand at
Mhm.
the time. And at times it felt like there was this overarching thing going on that was beyond us,
Mhm.
like bigger than us. And that's the only way I can describe it, that our love was bigger than just, you know, me and him being together, which is still very, very important, but it felt more important than that.
Yeah.
And as we, got to know each other and moved through our relationship, these children were coming through.
Mhm.
And there was multiple, but definitely River's energy. I would guess it was like 2 or 3 years roughly before we got pregnant with him. So yeah, it blew our minds. We talked about him way before he came into my belly.
Yeah. Yeah, even
Just
just
his
just
energy,
jokingly too, right?
jokingly,
And
because
just
like
like,
at times
oh
you
yeah, we'll have a baby someday. Ha ha
think
ha.
you think, oh, like, how can this be real? And I
Mhm.
think even times as spiritual people, we can even doubt the miraculous, like even doubt like this thing that's so, like, you're like, this can't be real, like this is too magical, this is like,
Mhm.
but at the same time, Brendon used to always say, like, this is what I would have written for myself or something like
Mm.
that.
I have said that. Yeah,
Which
it's
I
like this
love when
is
he would say that, because I'm like, totally,
yeah.
I think I would have wrote that for myself too
It's got
before.
the highs, it's got the lows, but out of it is like this very powerful like romantic story of
Romantic story.
perseverance and just like,
Yeah.
like meant to be kind of yeah, and just magic,
And
like
then,
lots of magic, yeah.
raising these, conscious beings, and being with like a person that's like your counterpart, that like sees you for who you truly are, and all of those things
Mm.
in between. But yeah, I think, conscious conception is an interesting and like a radical idea, but I think if you put it out there and you're curious about what maybe your future children could be, if you want to have them, honestly, even if you don't. Now, this is another interesting that I feel like maybe you don't want to necessarily bring babies forward into this timeline, and that's okay. But I feel like you can still connect with these guides and these higher dimensional babies. Like, I think that they're still
Mm.
accessible to everyone,
Mhm.
even if, say, you can't have babies. So I feel if more people realize that, then they could maybe heal themselves, but also there's so much to learn from them. Like, it's like he was saying, our children are our teachers. And that kind of ties into what conscious parenting is all about, is that we're looking at children as individuals.
Mhm.
They do not belong to us. We are stewards.
Stewards, yeah.
Yeah, our stewards for their growth, and we're just holding space for them. We just want to see them succeed. And that can look like anything for them. We just are holding space. So,
Yeah, which is, like the same thing that we would do for, another friend, another ally along our path is, it's like that's how things grow. It's not this idea of, trying to like force and dictate, but it's more a process of holding space, gently guiding, but then allowing them to be able to make the choices as they mature into the ability to be able to make choices. And now that River's here with us, again, it's kind of like we're 1 year into it, coming up on 1 year into it, and it's hard to even imagine him not being here.
yeah.
It's kind of like, it's like, wasn't he always here? And that's again kind of like
Yes.
this idea. It's like in some ways he was. The
Yeah.
energy of him was always there. And I think again, like as a being a person who desires to be able to connect with their spirituality, it's very important for us to kind of like be consciously aware and observe our patterns and our habits, and try to be able to like find a rhythm and a routine where like the spiritual presence and the spiritual awareness is a part of our everyday life. Because I know that again, like a big part of the challenges over the past year and everything like that has been feeling like I've got no time for my spirituality, no time for my spiritual practices. But then you start to kind of like redefine what being spiritual means. And it's like spirituality isn't always just like sitting down on a yoga mat and journaling and like saying a prayer to your connection with the universe and everything like that. But I think spirituality is relationships. It's whatever relationship you have with what is in your present experience, in your felt present experience in this moment. And so I think even though realistically, just because we got a lot that we're juggling and everything like that, if I haven't been to a yoga class in a while and everything, I'm not going to judge myself any less. But I can remind myself that every moment is an opportunity to practice my spirituality simply through the
Absolutely.
act of presence,
Yeah.
whether that be presence with Lacey or presence with River. And again, as parents, I think cultivating that consciousness within ourselves ultimately leads us back to this simple solution where, what do our children need? The thing that they need is our presence. That is what they desire. So like that is something that I continue to just strive to keep myself accountable to over the years, as River continues to grow. And again, and that can be a challenging thing where we're so much in this 3D matrix world, and there's things that can stress us out and everything. And I think what's almost more stressing is that on a soul level, it's just like I just want to be present with my children and present with my family, and yet there's like
Absolutely.
this kind of bigger thing going on that it's like a system in place that's almost trying to like take the family apart. Everyone has to go work somewhere else, everyone has to go do this, put the kids in daycare, put this there and that.
Yeah.
And so
And that's been one of our biggest challenges.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so like as I continue to kind of like navigate this path and be gentle with myself, I know what I want. I want to be like as present with my family as possible while still being able to like work on my own passions and crafts. And
Yeah.
it's something that takes time. And I think as we kind of move into the second year of River's Earthside existence and everything like that, I'm just allowing myself. I just feel like I'm kind of like finding my way back, and so like even with spirituality, regardless of being a parent, I think that's always a big part of the journey is carrying that intention of finding your way back to your center, because back to the heart cave, back to the magic of the heart cave, to use that literal term.
Yep.
Because I feel that that's kind of the challenge, not just as a parent but for any of us, is that we're constantly put through this experience, through this maya, through this dense reality with challenges and twists and turns, that it kind of pulls us away from our heart. And so what is the spiritual perspective on parenting? The spiritual perspective and the practice is to be able to feel when we're kind of getting pulled away from our center or drifting away from our center, regardless of the best intentions, and then to like find a way to get back to that. And maybe that just means like sitting down and having a conversation on a couch, or really just kind of just like sitting on the floor with River and just holding him, just kind of like seeing the world through his eyes. It's very special. It's still something that I'm every day I'm just allowing myself to just kind of like reflect and just process like what this means to me, what it's teaching me. Yeah, it's the word magic is really just like one of the best words to be able to describe it. The fact that like here River is like this soul that is literally someone that we have connected with before, and now here he is with us, and he's growing and he's learning and he's evolving, and we're witnessing it, and we're a part of that, and we're growing alongside with him as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah, we're growing so much. The past year has been, I think, such an intense and beautiful time, being a conscious parent and just being a spiritual person when we're, living in the same household as, another human being, but also multiple children, because he's also, a part of my older son's life as well. It pushes us to be the best versions of ourselves, even at times when we don't want to be. And I mean that with like love, just meaning sometimes life is hard and you want to just like be like, okay, I just want to go like, but when you have people relying on you, it's like you don't get to take the back seat to life. Like you have to show up, and you have to show up with love, and you have to show up with strength and like compassion and like so much. And it really, really forces us to just grow. Like you grow really quickly when you have children, and it's such a gift, and it is full of magic for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've like as a family, we really talk about like just like he said, sitting down and talking. We talk a lot. Like we communicate our needs, our feelings,
just
like
checking in.
we check in pretty regularly. Sometimes he might have a rough day, I might have a rough day, but we're always there for each other. And I think that's making us stronger as a couple, but also as a family.
Yeah, the unit as a whole. Because I mean, it's like we are the pillars for our children, and if we're having an off day, they know that, they sense it, and they might not fully be capable of knowing how to solve that situation. So it's up to us. And I know you have some more notes there as well, Lacey. And one of the things I was just going to say, like relative to spiritual perspective on parenting, that I choose to carry with me, is that the frustration will be a part of the journey, but it's knowing how to be able to navigate those waters again with mindfulness. And one of the things that I always go back to is, if there are times where one of us is having a bad day or one of us is frustrated for whatever the case may be, I always remind myself that it's never like me versus Lacey or Lacey versus me. It's us versus the situation, and not even necessarily versus, but it's just kind of like doing our best to like not take things personally, not let it get to a point where maybe it would ever turn into some sort of like shouting match. Like that's never happened with us, and unfortunately. And again, and I think that's going back to just kind of like my own virtue of just allowing myself to be conscious enough to be able to observe if I feel it's going to get to that point. Maybe that means I just need to like go for a walk, or it's oftentimes it's not like anything personal. It's something inside of us that has a need that's not being met. And so if something's feeling off, if something's off, then that means there's a need that's not being met. And so what can we do to be able to assess and again, just kind of like reevaluate where we're at? Because again, as conscious parents, like it is a constant job of self-evaluation. I think River's actually waking up now, but do you want to? I can go get him. We can bring him in here. You can keep talking. So
I'll go grab him.
You can go get him. So so even as as Lacey's doing that, again, like this is the reality of the experience of what parenting is. It's being able to kind of like maybe have a plan that you've got in place, but then being able to shift gears in a moment's notice. That's been a big challenge for me, is being able to try to find time to be able to work on my entrepreneurial stuff, my paradigm shift stuff, my ascension portraits, my crafting, my art, and this goes for Lacey as well. And then just like struggling to be able to designate as much time to it currently as perhaps I would in the past, especially with River really just evolving into like more of who he is. His schedule's changing, his needs are changing. Back when it was just like the earlier months, there's different chapters that we've kind of moved through. Like there's the early stages of when River came Earthside, and a lot of it was just like him basically just being a potato, and it was a lot of sleepless nights for us, and then there was a routine, there was a consistency, but it was still just like constantly demanding our attention. And then again, as he got older, within like by the time he was like 4, 5, and 6 months, his needs were changing as well. And now I feel in some ways it's weird, because in some ways it's gotten harder, but in other ways it's gotten easier. And I think that's just credit to our ability to be able to just kind of like accept what is, and to adapt to kind of like going with new rhythms and routines. And so like right now, River's sleep patterns are still kind of adjusting. He's kind of in this phase where we're getting him into his crib routines. But when he's awake during the day, for the most part, he constantly is like needing us to be able to engage with him, other than when we might just put him in the playpen for a while. So again, like just the main thing I was saying, just to recap for Lacey as she sits back down, and I guess River's just back to sleep again. Good. I wasn't sure if we were gonna bring him in here or not. Guest appearance there. But yeah, what I was just saying is that like being part of the spiritual perspective is being able to, in some ways, like not just like give up on the things that we're passionate about, but just to be able to kind of like find find peace in the idea that things might not necessarily happen in the same time frame that we might desire them to, and to
It's
really
the
just
biggest act of surrender. Yeah.
surrendering constantly and constantly and constantly, and there might be multiple times throughout the day where you just surrender, and you
Like
really just have to.
today is a full on river day, you know,
Yeah.
or a full on both the kids
What's
days.
that? You had something you wanted to do today? Well, it totally depends around what his schedule is, and you just kind of
Yeah.
have to adapt to that. So, being spiritual in general is really adaptability.
Yes.
It's like the being water quotes and everything like that. It's being able to bend with the
Not
bamboo.
being so rigid
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
And I know for me and Brendon, we work well in a structured environment.
Hmm.
We like having our schedules, we like having our routines.
Hmm.
Children upend routines.
Constantly. Yeah.
It's like it's hard to stick to it, and I think that we're constantly learning to be at peace that the structure that we're trying to build,
Hmm.
within reason, is not always going to be smooth. There's going to be
Yeah.
peaks,
there's a
you know.
lot of there's a lot of like moving gears every single day,
Yeah.
if we're kind of like alternating, taking turns with the baby, and then one of us is getting a task done, and then sometimes it's just like trying to make sure that we're staying on top of just basic chores and
Yeah.
everything, and again,
Because
like
we like a clean environment, and it's
that's
okay
it.
if,
Yeah.
I know with conscious parenting, not everybody has a structure and a routine. Some people just kind of follow their children's leads. And that's amazing and beautiful. And if it works for you, I think then follow that lead. We ebb and flow with that.
Yeah.
We definitely like a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And it helps us just regulate stuff. And a lot of it comes down to me and my I guess like the way I process emotions and the way I
Mhm.
process chaotic energy. I need like that like structure to keep me in check.
Yeah.
Not so much everyone else, but more so me. So I'm not flying off the freaking handle because I am quite I absorb stuff very easily.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
which I'm
Yeah.
learning more about. So.
Yeah, again, like being a parent, and kind of like continuing to evolve our own relationship with our spirituality, it just demands like an incredible amount of self-awareness, in terms of like what our needs are, and acknowledging like when things might be feeling a little off, not just tired from just like regular stuff, but like,
Mm.
like when there's something that needs to be assessed and addressed, and I think just constantly, like we don't, just, I think there's almost kind of like this expectation. It's like, oh, you're a parent, it's just like, oh, like that must be beautiful and miserable and exhausting all at the same time, and I think it is, but I think there's ways that we're learning to get better at it, and I think
Every day.
we owe it to ourselves and to our children to get better at being a parent, and again, and I think the core to that is by getting better at being able to assess our own needs on a regular basis, and then being able to find ways to meet those needs, and being able to find ways to share those responsibilities, so that if one person needs some time off, the other person's taking the load, and then we can kind of like switch back and forth. It's this constant juggling act, and a
It
big
is,
part of it
yeah.
is, just like having that like open-hearted communication and not taking things personally, and just really being able to again have that flexibility.
Yeah.
Lacey, I know you got some more notes here, and we'll
Yeah, I
try
just
to
wanted to touch base on
go
all the
on. There's some really cool
points.
topics that we still want to be able to get into here, and
We'll see if we do.
we'll generally
But
aim to keep this broadcast within about an hour or so, but yeah.
yeah, just like some of the notes that I took about specifically about like conscious parenting and kind of
Mhm.
what that looks like for us. Um, and I kind of touched base with that already about like how, you know, not involving our ego and ownership over these beings, like they are, as much as they are like attached to us in the first like 7 years of their life, like they're very bound to us, they're still like individuals. So that's kind of something that we're really like passionate about, is just like they are their own beings. And I think it comes a lot down to like my personal experience with like, parental figures and stuff, which I won't get into, but when it comes to just like that relationship and how it can go the other way and be negative and not good. So I have a lot to draw from what not to do, but that's a big one. Also, I put conflict as a natural part of sharing a life with someone, which we just talked about, conflict, struggle, and everything. But it's like how we meet this, like conflict, is our choice. Um, we are always setting healthy boundaries with the boys. River's obviously still young, and we practice attachment parenting with him, so we co-sleep predominantly with him, and we still do contact naps, and we carry him a lot. Like he's still very attached to us, but we're still setting boundaries, especially with my older son. He's learning about those. And then also trying to really practice like positive reinforcement and involving my older son in, like daily tasks and getting him excited and involved in the unit, in the family unit. Because it's a relationship. We're all in a relationship together. It's not just me and Brendon, like it's all of us. Although this is very important as well. It's just the two of us, which we can talk about that as well. But yeah, I wanted to talk about like Rudolf Steiner things. I was telling you about
that's super interesting.
I was listening to a podcast last week called Mysterious Universe, and it talks about all sorts of stuff, like crazy stuff. But they talked a little bit about Rudolf Steiner's 7-year cycle. And every 7 years, we move into a new developmental like stage of life. But also just like, not just in the physical, but also in our astral, in the higher dimensional spaces. And since we both, are very energetic people, something interesting they said was that our children in the first 7 years actually share our etheric field, which is our field of our life force. It's like for our vitality, our health. And so we're sharing that now with multiple beings. So usually during that time, it can be very intense and tiring because you are quite literally giving some of your life force to another being. And I found that fascinating because, of course, you're like, well, yeah, I'm tired. And like, we're juggling a lot and we're just trying to take care of ourselves. But it put things into perspective for me because I was like, yes, like I feel that. Like I totally feel like he is a part of me. He's, for the first couple of years, like the first 2 years, he doesn't really see himself separate from me, right? Like with breastfeeding and all of that. And like, the fact that we are practicing attachment parenting and he sleeps in the bed with us, like he's attached to us, like he thinks he's us, right? Like we are like in a symbiotic relationship right now, and he will learn his autonomy, but there's no rush, obviously. But I just thought that was so fascinating. I would definitely look into it if you're curious about the 7-year cycle. It goes way more in depth about like, but around the age of 7, when they really move away from your field and into their own. And my older son just turned 8, and it's been such a big shift emotionally. He's moving further away from me, and becoming more independent and more of like a big boy in a lot of ways. And like we've already noticed, shifts in Jaden that have been really interesting to observe. But yeah, they go over all like right into like the teen years and beyond. And I just thought, most of the time we don't really pay attention to these subtleties or these other, it's like we have our physical body, this like organic body that's like moving through life, but there's so much else going on. Like when we sleep, like there's just so much that we should be paying attention to, I think, help, understand ourselves better, but also our relationship with like friends, family, and children as well. So yeah, I just thought that was really, really cool. And I wanted to share that. I was like, wow, yes, I'm sharing my field so that it is my duty to strengthen my field, not only for myself, but for River and for Jaden. But now that Jaden's moving away from it, really just like strengthening it for River, and
Yeah.
so we can be, more grounded and healthy, and yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and if you just want to even just check your notes, as I'll just chit chat for a bit, and then we
yeah,
can make sure we're hitting on everything that we got there.
yeah.
Again, I think it's very interesting to kind of try to just like really observe like what parenting looks like in this day and age, and the society and the kind of conditioning that we've created, where yes, it is something that has been done throughout the ages, and again, I think from that perspective, and I know I talked about this even way back before River was born, that was always something that was very powerful for me, because like I kind of was able to observe this almost latent dormant archetype within me kind of rising to the surface, the archetype of being a father, and this emerging kind of evolving sacred masculine archetype, being the protector and the guardian
Mm,
and again the steward, much of again what is akin and shared by both mother and father,
mm.
but really just being able to kind of like observe this being born within inside myself. And like that's kind of the idea, is that through the process of a child being born, from the parent's perspective, there is also the experience of a death and a rebirth. There is a death of the old way, there is a death of like being just Brendon individually as a
Mhm.
unit, even though Lacey and I would share this morphogenetic field and this connection. But now, like we said,
It
now that
was
now
much
now
different,
that
yeah.
it's this much more kind of like singular unit, and there's
Mhm.
this again this beautiful dissolving of boundaries. One of the things that again being a parent had that I brought into even before River was born was just like the importance of patience, and patience is always just like something that I try to keep at the forefront of my mind. And yes, there will be times where I'll be exhausted, but I allow my patience to just kind of like guide me and push me through, and the perseverance that kind of comes out of that. And again, like being a parent, and this is kind of going back to what the point I want to make. Being a parent in today's day and age, I feel it requires something that wasn't necessarily the same experience of the past, where it
Mhm.
is something where like in the past, bringing a child into this world would be the role of a village, and yet here
Yeah.
we are, as two individuals trying to do this while still trying to manage all the expectations of
So much.
this
Mhm.
society and this matrix, and bills and everything like that, everything that everybody listening to this can relate to on some level. But again, as much as we can just be like, well, it's like this isn't like really the way it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
It also really just reflects on just kind of like what we want for our children, and what we want for our children is this connection of the village, is this connection of the community. And I'm so proud of the fact that we've been able to do this, to more or less like on our own. And it really just shows like again the adaptability and the versatility and the patience, that we carry with us, and the strength and the perseverance of being a parent. And that's the thing, like being a parent has showed me a strength within inside me and within inside Lacey, that I could say I knew it was always there, but until you experience it, you don't fully know.
Mm. Yeah.
um but again, like as a parent, you're raising a child, but at the same time you're also trying to craft an environment, that will be one in which they will thrive. And so I think as parents, it's important for us to really just kind of reflect on those questions of, well, what do we want for our child?
Yeah.
Not just kind of, because I think like sometimes, when we parent, not just like we, but just kind of like people in general, there's almost kind of like and again, this is to no fault of anyone, but there's almost kind of like lazy parenting,
Mm.
lazy habits,
Yeah.
and again, I think that's a side effect of the fact that
Could even be passed down, like patterns
passed
passed
down,
down.
and
Yeah.
just people again not having their needs met, and then
Mm.
next thing you know, you just kind of like pass the baby off to it, like an electronic device, and they're not necessarily like getting the things that are really going to make them thrive. And so
Mm.
like as River continues to grow older, you know, like that's where I'm getting really excited about being able to like bring them with us out onto nature, into nature exploration more,
Yeah.
bringing him into conscious festivals, bringing him into that spiritual community. You know, the first year of River's life is very much just like this incubation phase, and just kind of, you know, like getting him up to speed, getting him eating, getting him starting to
Getting
walk.
prepared for the basics.
He's getting
Yeah.
prepared. It takes a while, like the body's still growing, but you know, like to be able to, you know, think about where we'll be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. Like I want to be able to help like assist this being on their journey of being able to connect with the magic of this world through their own experience, through their own
Mm,
perspective,
absolutely.
and to be able to surround themselves with various role models. And again, you know, like that's something that I know I reflected on upon even in our past podcasts is, you know, like it's not just this idea. It's like, oh, we're raising a child. It's like there is, from a nonlinear perspective, you know, this idea of reverse time theory, something I talk about, you know, like with Inside River, there is this full grown person. There's this full grown adult person. Who are they? What are they here to do?
Yeah.
And much in the same way that Lacey and I are here to be able to help create a better world, not just for River, but for the generations to come. You know, it's fascinating to think of just like being able to be honored by the fact that we are playing this very important role in helping River grow into their adult stage, where they too will be able to continue to play a role in creating a bigger role, a bigger world for everyone.
Mhm.
You know, like
More hopefully magical, healthy
yeah,
living.
and balance, and you know, really, you know, I think it's important for us to really just like ask those questions, like what do we want for our children? And I think a lot of that is, you know, things that we want for ourselves, maybe things we didn't have for ourselves as well. You know, this connection to community and to nature and to creativity and to artistic expression and to, you know,
Mm,
just like adventure and mystery, and really just allowing them to experience the richness that this life has to offer.
yeah.
We owe it to them. We owe it to them to be able to help guide them into those situations. So, you know, that's the role of a parent. It's to be able to kind of like just be open to that mystery for ourselves, and to kind of reflect back on what things brought us joy, and then to be able to lead our child into those spaces. And it's amazing just to already see River just kind of, you know, the way he just like looks at trees and the way he looks at snow, and you can tell he's taking it in,
Yeah.
he's observing, and some ways like you can tell like things are clicking for him and stuff.
He
And
already has like a
yeah,
natural I guess like affinity for like music and
yeah,
for
totally.
nature. He seems to be
And
drawn to and
animals and
animals. He
stuff, yeah.
adores the animals. Very he tries to talk to them and stuff. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
cool to see the spark
Hmm.
that he's already kind of like processing and looking and just soaking it up. And
Hmm.
each child will be different, you know, as much as Brendon's like, oh, you know, we'll like kind of lead them and show them for like, you know, what we liked as children or what our interests were, but also still giving them space to discover that themselves. And, you know, like my older son, he's very techie. He likes the techie stuff. He's very passionate about, you know, like building stuff online and like building worlds within worlds
Hmm.
and the whole video game stuff. And we love it, and we support it, and we just
Hmm.
try to hope that he leans more into the creative aspect versus the, you know, the distraction aspect. But he's
Hmm.
still a child, so we're
Yeah,
still holding space for both, because, you know, kids want to play and kids want to silly stuff. So but we're always trying to give him opportunities to, you know, to lean into the creative aspects of what he's passionate about. And, you know, like that even come down to me trying to learn how to code so I can help
yeah,
him code and we can code together. And we've been having fun with that. And then Brendon likes to do, you know, what he's passionate about with Jaden, and that's more athletic stuff, which I love because I think
hmm,
he needs that well-rounded perspective. But then also we want him to lead. We want him to make the choices. We don't want it to be a pressure. We don't be like, you have to like go out and do this now, because then it takes the joy and it takes away the spark. It needs to be self-guided. At least from my personal experience, anytime I was like pressured into, I guess, succeeding or accomplishing something, it took away my ability to get there myself. Does that make sense? It's like I felt like I needed my own gumption to do that. Of course, like we want to gently give the children the option, right? Like, check this out. What do you think? Right?
Yeah, we guide them to it, but allowing them to be able to, it's being a parent is the ultimate role of being a mentor, and that is a constant feedback loop where you're just kind of checking in with them, and you might share something that you're passionate about and share your joy and share your excitement, and allow them to be able to see your excitement and maybe even to ask questions about, well, why does this excite you, Dad? And you'll be like, oh, well, to me, XYZ, yada yada yada, and then allow them to be like, oh, like that sounds really cool, because like I think as parents and as people who hold a spiritual perspective, I think it's very important for us to be constantly nurturing our own passions as well. We don't just want to be the people that just take them to school and feed them and plop them in front of the TV and drive them to the toy store and stuff like that. It's like I think we owe it to ourselves to be able to meet them in a space of passion and joy and play, and to really kind of like bridge that gap. I think a lot of parents may suffer from this idea of thinking that being a parent, especially as the children reach a certain age, is that it means that in some ways they almost kind of like they lose some of their own passions, they lose some of their own magic. And so
you want to share your passions.
And so children, sure. We want to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be, for our own sake, but also for our children's sake. And so that's where especially as this next year kind of continues to move forward, it's very important for Lacey and I to be making time to be able to engage with the things that we're passionate about, such as conversations literally like this. Because like this isn't just something where we're telling you everything that we think you need to hear, but we're also having this conversation so that we can hear it ourselves. Absolutely. so that we can step away from this and be like, well, what did we talk about there? What does being a conscious parent actually mean to us? And to not just have it as words, but to actually have it as values and virtues and actions and things that we are living up to. I think being a parent requires accountability, and it requires consistency, and it requires, again, just kind of like having a support system and a network that is going to help, like I said, bring us back to that center. It will stress you out, it will challenge you, it will exhaust you, but at the same time, it's going to show you how incredibly versatile and flexible you are, and it's within those places where we can really just kind of like focus in on the present moment, that we get to experience these oftentimes like incredibly like psychedelic moments of just like being here with this being, like, and whether that's Jaden or whether that's River. And there's something so incredibly magical about being in the presence of a young child that is like so pure, so close to source. It's like being in the presence of an angel or something like that. And again, like there's and we've talked about this a bit in the past, and we didn't really talk about it too much here, but even for River and for us, we talked about how there's like this connection prior to him being here within dream time, but there's also this whole connection of how he connects into like our UFO sightings and stuff. And we've kind of had this idea of be like was that him? Like was the UFO like connected to River? Like was that actually him showing up? And then there's this whole time travel. It sounds like a sci-fi movie, and we're well aware of that. And we may not necessarily
go more in depth with that. I think we might talk about
will be a future episode of
UFOs
and all sorts of stuff.
Beings and connections to beings, because that one is pretty far out. And
but
we still don't know what that all means, but I'd love to talk about it.
But nonetheless, I just think we've been gifted with our whole experience with just like our relationship and with River really being driven by magic, and I think we owe it to our children to continue to let magic lead our relationship, and magic is, again, being able to connect with just kind of like the everyday, with the
Leading with
nature,
love,
leading
leading
with
with
love
love.
and joy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's what, we always come back to that. And even on hard days, um, me and Brendon are always very present to continue to be there for
yeah.
each
Hmm.
other and check in with each other and still making time to love each other.
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot going on. Like we're busy, busy, busy. And sometimes you're like, I just don't want to be busy. One thing I wanted to say, based on what he was talking about, is that as a parent, and honestly, like if you find yourself in a hard situation, be gentle with yourself and know that nothing is permanent and things are always changing and moving. And maybe today you're sitting on the couch and your baby's sitting on the couch with you and you haven't got anything done and you're tired and you're sad, and that's okay. You can still rise up to be, the conscious parent, and you will have those days where you fall off, and that's okay. It's a manual, you know what I mean? Like it's not, there's many different ways to get there, is all I'm trying to say. Is this way works for us, there might be a totally different way that works for you, but keeping your heart open and always choosing love and being there for your babies, that's all your babies need. That's all your children need, is your presence and your love at the end of the day. And sometimes I need that reminder because I struggle with a lot of other things outside of just being a parent. And, like working on my own trauma and my own stuff, and then having to show up for children in such a loving and present way. While I need that from my own parents or my own self, it
Hmm.
can be challenging. So I just think, if you're having those hard days, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's all right. You're on the path regardless, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it ebbs and it flows.
It
And
does.
and
Yeah.
again, it's like part of being a conscious parent is understanding that just even outside of being a parent, we will go in and out of being conscious and unconscious. Like there may be days where, again, and that's the thing, like I find that in the periods where we're just like so drained and so exhausted and so just like deprived, that's where it's easy to kind of like slip into the unconscious and slip into these
Mm,
like cycles of thoughts, and we can really beat ourselves up. And I
yeah.
go through these cycles, and
Yeah.
there are days where like both of us are just like feeling really depressed and everything like that. And again, and in those moments it's just like I don't know what to do. I feel lost. And again, I
Mhm.
think there's many reasons for that. But again, I think it's okay to just be where you are, and
Yeah.
to pay attention to where you are, why you are where you are, and to choose to move beyond it, and stay there as long as you want.
Yeah.
But ideally don't stay there, more than you need to, if you are having those days where you're feeling like really low. And I think that's where, again, like being able to have like the resources and the connections and the community is so incredibly important. And my heart goes out to the people who don't have those resources, because that's when it becomes, very
Yeah.
detrimental. And I think that's, just like a reflection on kind of like where our society is at, where, especially for people who might be single parents, where they're expected to totally navigate this,
To
fully
work,
on their own
to
and
do
everything like
everything.
that.
Like, oh my gosh,
It's asking a hell of a lot. And I
you're
think
asking a lot of you.
the soul, and that was like the thing where we would feel this and we would vocalize it, where it's just like our souls feel tired. And
Yeah.
again,
We're
and
feeling tired energetically.
energetically, like
Yeah.
our fields would just be tired. But again,
Exhausted.
it's from that spiritual perspective, it's always important to know that there's a move that we can make, that there's something that we can do, that there's, this like infinite energetic field around us that we can tap into. And that's something where, again, like both of us can practice kind of like watering the other. Or it means, again, we just like go out and get a good meal if we have the funds available for it, or we go out and we get a hike, and just like constantly just like assessing and evaluating. And again, and
Mhm.
and like I said, like even just the term spirituality in itself, to me, really just comes down to relationship. what is our relationship between ourselves, between the divine, between our roles as parents, between our relationship with River, and just being as present and as conscious and aware of what that relationship looks like in that moment. And if it feels like it's away from center, to be able to reflect and how we can bring it back to center, and
what are
to
the steps we can take to get us back to
yeah,
center,
and to know what those steps are.
You know, you will fall off the path.
Yeah.
You will be led down dark avenues and be like, where am I, what am I doing? And that actually strengthens your purpose. And you know, that leads into probably the last part of what we'll talk about, is just about raising conscious children for the future and why that's important, but also like living with purpose, and like how that is like such a beautiful thing that has a lot of purpose. And I'm always reminded of that daily, is like, you know, obviously we have purpose outside of parenting and raising babies and stuff like that, but it's one of the grandest things that we could possibly do while we are here. Outside of, you know, making art and you know, helping community and help, you know, doing stuff like that, and making, you know, right choices for the planet through the food we eat, and stuff like that. And that all ties in together. And those are lessons that we can pass on. But as beings here, as record keepers, we have stories to tell, and we are going to pass those stories on to our children. And as spiritual, awake people, I think it's our role to pass these stories on, these lessons, so that they can plant that seed on the earth. It's a code, right? Like it's as soon as we have come incarnated, there's a code in us that is passed on. And that code is in River, and it's in Jaden, and they will pass it on if they choose to. And I'm hoping, you know, that 1,000 years from now, our future, you know, offspring, what would you call our
descendants?
Descendants will carry that code, and that code will be full of magic, and they will be amazing dreamers and super creative, and they'll be traveling, you know, the universe for all we know. But the seed is there.
And I agree. And as we get kind of close to wrapping this up again, you know, I just even invite you to kind of like step back as we look at this bigger picture, where, you know, it's like being a conscious parent with where we are now is just one step in a much bigger journey. And, you know, like every single one of us carries keys, carries gifts, carries codes, as Lacey was saying, that we bring into this world. And so, you know, like our role as parents is to be able to, again, like help River get to the point where he can share those gifts himself, where he can pass on those keys himself. And it's interesting because, you know, like as we become parents, it's important for us to just be able to reflect on the fact that it's like we too were once children, and we too, you know, like have gotten to the point where we can share these gifts. And it's interesting to kind of like just imagine that, you know, with Lacey and I coming together and literally, you know, like merging our DNA, which is just like so incredibly mind-boggling, that this is the experience that humans get to be able to go through, where we have two totally separate people who get to be able to merge themselves and create like a new being out of this. And then again, you know, it's just like it's, you know, we're not just doing this for River as much as he is the being that we are connected with in the present moment, but everything that we are doing in the bigger picture is, like we said, like for generations to come. If we can show up in the best way that we can now, that has a ripple effect into the future in a much bigger way,
generations or something. You
in a much bigger way,
generations ahead.
Like we are the great grandparents of someone in some timeline somewhere down the road. And to be able to just kind of be humbled by the small role we play in a much bigger story, as big as that role is to us right now, is incredibly fascinating to just kind of try and conceptualize. And I think as individuals and spiritual people, it's you know, we don't fully know, but at the same time we can still feel, we can still kind
Yeah.
of feel the future, we can feel the idea, we can
It's rippling
feel the
back to
story, it's
us.
rippling back, the future already exists. And so, you know, it's just I like to just kind of like think of even just like both River and maybe River's children and his children just kind of like whispering to us and just saying like, it's like, you guys are doing great, you got this, thank you for sharing your gifts. And again, and I say this to everyone because, you know, as much as we are here to be able to again be the stewards for this child to share their gifts, there is always a time and a space for all of us as we continue to become adults to be able to continue to share our gifts, to continue to be able to share our keys and our codes and everything like that. So
And if it's not us, then who, right? Like, this is what it
absolutely.
really comes down to, is like, you know, we think about the best time, but
Mm-hmm.
but when is the best time? You know, now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it kind of changes, I think, your choices a little bit, when you're thinking that far ahead, when you're thinking in a non-linear way and like a much bigger, grander way. You know,
Yeah.
River can be whoever he wants to be. That's not something that we're too concerned about. And I'm sure he'll fall off the
Mm-hmm.
path and he'll find his way again. And we're not looking
Yeah.
to, you know, create like divine, you know, he's a human being. He came here to be human and play human.
Yeah.
But yeah, those seeds that we are planting with him will have a lasting effect on, you know, the generations to come. And I think about, you know, yeah, like 1,000 years from now, whatever, but maybe our, you know, our relatives, you know, our future grandchildren, wherever, they'll be pioneers on a new planet, and
Who
they're
knows?
maybe
Yeah.
they'll be farmers and they're planting
Yeah.
seeds on a,
Yeah.
you know, like that's the thing. It's like, we really don't know and we won't know, and that's okay. But I like to just think of just how much magic there is
Yeah.
by being us, you know. Nothing is a mistake. Like, we are meant to be together. We were meant to bring River Earthside
Mm-hmm.
together.
Yeah,
And
it was like a mission that was assigned to
it's a
us,
mission that was assigned to
but
us.
we also chose it
We chose
because
it, like, probably before we incarnated, right? Like, we knew that, you know. For me, it's funny because, you know, I went with my previous partner. I was with him for a very long time. You know, he's my first love and stuff like that. And we did have a son together, my older son, Jaden. And during that time, you know, I knew I had more children in my future. Like, I felt them,
Mm-hmm.
but I never thought that. But this is the funny part, is like, I did, but I also didn't want to believe that, like, I'd have to start over with someone or something like that. And I'd be having children with like 2 different people. I thought, oh gosh, that's not for me, right? Like, that's not the timeline. I didn't write that for myself, but I totally did, because they're unique in what they offer me.
Mm-hmm.
And my life has been nothing but unique opportunities, is the best way I can describe it. As that it's given me so much growth, like quite accelerated. Yeah, he's up.
Let's just bring him in here and then we'll
He
wrap it
can, and
up.
then we'll say
Yeah.
closing.
We'll finish with a special guest appearance from the man himself. And yeah, you know, it's being a parent and kind of like incorporating our own perspectives of spirituality really just invites us to be able to see the bigger ripple that we are creating here. And you know, and I'll kind of wait until Lacey gets back because I want her to be able to hear some of this. But you know, it's this idea that there is a tremendous amount of love that is being sent back to us in this moment. And I don't necessarily just mean to us specifically, but you know, to all of us, to kind of know that, you know, like this family that we connect to, this soul family, this ripple, this kind of like multi-generational soul lineage is something that is connecting and transmitting just kind of like this infinite stream of love into this present moment, that is supporting us, that is guiding us, that is with us. And so I think there's a great deal of strength that is drawn from that. There's a great deal of humility that is drawn from that. As Lacey comes back with River, I'll probably even just reiterate what I was just saying. Lacey was just reflecting on how through the lineage, there he is, through the lineage of the children, that we are bringing into this world and into the future, like there is like this like soul family that is like sending us so much love, and so much support and so much just like encouragement. And again, I think as parents, the spiritual journey is understanding that it's possible for us to kind of get sucked into the Maya, and to start playing the drama and everything, but we are part of a much bigger story, and to be able to be aware that that story even exists, hey buddy, and to be able to know how to be able to step back and how to reflect, and to be able to kind of like use that reflection as a way to reinvigorate and re-empower ourselves. And here we are with this beautiful cherub, this like wonderful little like being of joy, and
he's so joyful,
and it's just such a gift to be again like in his presence, and to be his caretaker, to be his parent, to be his father, to be his mother every single day. It's just
so
it's
grateful.
as challenging as it is an absolute gift. And the gift isn't just the fact that he's like great to be around, but the gift is what we receive through the roles that we are continuing to step into as well. So with that said, we'll basically wrap it up here. We've got as parents, we've got stuff to do with River, but closing thoughts, Lacey, on what it is that we want to just kind of like finish the episode with.
Sure. I would say is like, just lead with love, and try to make the right choices. Each day will be a new opportunity to start again and try again when it comes to being more present in your life, whether that's with children or not. I know every day is an opportunity for us to try, and we're on the journey. We're both learning. As much as I've done it before, I'm doing it again. It's a new experience. Exactly. It's a new experience for the three of us. I feel truly blessed to be on this journey with Brendon, and to see him rise as a father. And he's such a good daddy, and he really just shows me how committed he is and how passionate he is. And that's always something that I was attracted to, that he really knows how to ground himself and make the right choices. And it teaches me a lot, but it's a good example for this little guy. So we're just happy to be here again and start doing the podcast more, and we love to just chat and hang out, and you'll see him more for sure. Lots of hopefully beautiful things in the future for our little family.
No, it's amazing, just kind of being where we are and thinking back on how far we have come, and again, and just knowing that the next steps of the journey are to just be able to continue to show River what's possible, both in terms of like just like the magic and mystery of this world, and just to how to be a kind and considerate and compassionate and creative individual that is not just like here to simply serve themselves, but to serve others. I think that's something that as I continue to grow as a father, and to as River continues to mature, the conversations he and I will be having will be much more in depth. He'll be able to fully understand what I'm saying to him, and that will be something for me to reflect on in those times of like, well, what virtues do I hope to instill into him? What virtues will help him kind of navigate this world with a sharp mind, and with a kind heart. And I think that's very important, and it doesn't have to be incredibly complicated. I think like if we continue to kind of like embody peace within ourselves, then it's natural for our children to just kind of like echo what it is that they receive and what they perceive through simply being in our presence. So, you know, as much as he's teaching me how to be silly and goofy and funny and, you know, all sorts of all sorts of things, you know, it's a mutual exchange, and I hope to teach to teach River how to, again, just be, you know, just how to be strong, how to be soft, how to be courageous, how to be, you know, like I said, like creative, and to really just be a good friend, be a, you know, a good
brother.
And eventually when he grows up, he can be his own partner and maybe a father himself someday. We'll see where the journey goes. But yeah, spirituality.
We're here for it.
Spirituality and parenting, they're hand in hand, and I think, again, you know, I'm just so grateful to be able to be on this journey that is constantly teaching us more and more each day, and as long as we're conscious of the fact that there's more to learn each day, then that's the best way for us to be able to learn, is to just be able to acknowledge that the lessons are there in the first place, and again, in integrating it, and, you know, letting go of the fact that things change, and just being present as we can in the present moment, and and doing our best to be able to constantly integrate, to integrate like the new lessons and the new versions of ourselves, to fractal into the best versions that we can be. So yeah. Hey buddy, what do you think? Yeah. So
What do you think, really?
all right, so Lacey, any closing thoughts? Just gratitude.
Yeah, just gratitude. Thanks for being here as always, and loving us, and we love you guys.
Feel it a lot. So.
And we just, we're excited for the future. And
we're excited to continue creating and serving, and sharing with you the journey along the way. So
the stuff we learn along the way.
That's what we're here for. So so thank you again for joining us here in another episode of Magic of the Heart Cave. We're still got plenty more discussions ahead of us that we're excited to be able to dive into. And if you guys ever have any recommendations and requests for topics you might want to see us explore, go ahead and leave those comments down in the chat below, into the YouTube comments, etc., etc. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. Again, one of the best ways to support us, either single donations through our PayPal, through our Stripe. Patreon is a monthly contribution, and through there, we're also getting back into hosting regular events. You can also reach out through Ascension Portraits, which is our side business, and we're just so grateful, and we are very excited and humbled and honored to be able to share with you more of this ongoing, exciting psychedelic journey. So with that said,
until next time.
River said it right there. That's all there is to say. So until next time, thank you guys so much. We look forward to being able to share more magic with you here in Magic of the Heart Cave. So there you go. Good boy. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.